Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to History Gaming Verified. Today we are going to take a look at a less well-known but extremely interesting real-time tactics game, and its name is Ultimate General Civil War. The game depicts the, obviously, American Civil War from 1861 to 1865 by a series of historical battles and minor engagements, which you are able to play with either the United or Confederated States of America. Winning battles grants you more money and recruits, as also political reputation to grow and arm your forces. It was made by the acclaimed AI modder Nick Tomadis, known for his Total War Darth Mod series and his studio Game Labs. So much for the basic informations. Now let's take a look at how accurately the game actually depicts the historical events. First up, one of the negative points. It was and still is just plain normal to retreat when you notice a battle is lost. Well, just as in Total War, the AI doesn't do that here. And on top of this, fleeing units can't leave the battlefield. This leads to the surviving enemies often ending up in one corner of the map to be captured or slaughtered to the last man, which is pretty nice for you as it reduces the amount of troops for the AI in the next battles, and also grants you additional captured weapons. Not very historical or realistic though. The available generals and very few elite units are a positive point though. Throughout your campaign you will be able to recruit a lot of officers, from captains to brigadier generals. But with political reputation and through won battles you will get your hands on historical generals like Meade, Grant, Lee and Jackson. Also, some elite units will join your army after certain battles, for example after winning Antietam. As the Union, the Iron Brigade shows up in your camp. Another negative point are the weapons. There's actually a huge number of muskets, rifles, carbines, revolvers and artillery pieces available in the game to arm your army with. The problem is some of them don't work as they did in reality. For example, all basic infantry rifles and muskets have the same range. They only vary in reload speed, damage, close combat damage and killing efficiency. There's a range rating, but this only indicates how high the hit rate is at max range. And a bayonet works just as well on an M1842 Springfield musket as on an M1862 Springfield rifle. But despite that, muskets have a higher close combat rating. Also, repeating and breech loading rifles work really bad in huge units. As they are not able to fire freely, but only in salvos, large infantry brigades often need longer to fire all their weapons than the reload time of their guns is. This severely limits the use of these, according to historical accounts, highly efficient and devastating modern infantry weapons. On top of that, some pictures don't really add up. On the other hand, the weapons are also a positive point, because there's really a lot of them. Early on you are lacking modern rifles and there are almost none available for purchase, so you will go to war with smoothbore muskets and gradually increase the firepower of your units with other more advanced weapons from the USA, CSA and abroad. Union commanders will get Springfield and Harper Ferry's rifles, while Confederate army leaders will have to rely on foreign weapons like the 1853 Enfield and Lawrence rifles early in the campaign. Later on, Henry Repeaters or Fayetteville's will be available. Same goes for skirmisher weapons with scopes in the end, cavalry with Colts, Lamars or carbines like the Spencer, and of course the artillery with cannons like the 3-inch ordnance rifle or the 20-pounder Parrots. Cavalry is also one of the negative and at the same time somewhat positive points of the game. In the American Civil War, cavalry largely operated as a screening and reconnaissance force, which sadly is not really modeled in the game. The sidelines are just far too good for that. Also, close combat cavalry with revolvers and sabers is incredible bad at close combat, which is, strangely, at the same time pretty true. The cavalry forces of both sides were not really trained for the massed, concentrated and still highly devastating cavalry charges of the European armies of the time, as this required well-bred and trained horses, and of course equally well-trained riders, which both sides lacked. In the other role it was historically used as mounted infantry, it is actually pretty good. Fighting in a dispersed infantry formation, skirmishing with carbines, a small dismounted cavalry unit in good cover is able to fight far stronger infantry units to a draw, or even win the engagement. It also excels at raiding behind enemy lines. If you manage to get one or more cavalry units in the enemy's rear, they can wreak havoc on supply wagons and artillery units, or even dismount and attack his front line from the flank or the rear, cutting lines of retreat and forcing units to surrender. Hugely positive, though, is the attention to detail on the battle maps. This might not really apply to the minor engagements throughout the campaign, as these are usually cut-out parts of the larger maps that are more or less similar to the actual battlefields. But the major battles are just gorgeous. All maps are handmade, based on satellite photographs, GPS data, and historical accounts. The battles often play out just in the way they did in history, of course with some changes due to you possibly being able to hold or capture positions that in reality were lost or not reached. The fighting for Stonebridge early in the Battle of Bull Run, the infamous and bloodily repulsed attacks on Mary's Heights during the Battle of Fredericksburg, known from the movie Gods and Generals, or the stalwart defense of Little Round Top by the 20th Maine Regiment, known from the movie Gettysburg. All these locations are easily identifiable, and fighting the battles you know from paintings and movies is just incredible. Sadly, not all maps are completely accurate. For example, the area around Burnside's Bridge at Antietam is far too open, and one of the rivers at Gaines Mill is too broad, making it a far better defensive position than it was in reality. Still, overall the devs did a great job here, creating a very immersive battlefield feeling that I did not experience so far, and this I say as someone who owns and played all Total War titles. Something that probably diminishes the overall experience a bit is the lack of trench warfare and working fortifications. In the last 2 years of the American Civil War, battles got sieges, with huge trench systems and artillery concentrations hailing the arrival of industrialized mass warfare with stagnating front lines that would come to its horrible climax in the First World War. To be honest though, I understand why the developers decided to give you huge final battles to the campaigns. It would just not have been fun. The problem is though that this led to badly worked out fortifications that often more reduce the fighting capabilities of the units holding them. Not really realistic or historically accurate. A positive point is the scale of the battles and the campaigns in combination with mechanics. While you can't influence which battles you have to fight, you don't automatically lose the campaign if you lose a battle, or only reach a draw. It depends on your political reputation that you gain or lose through victories and defeats, or that you use to get more weapons, money, and better officers. The management part in camp between battles shows nicely, though somewhat abstracted, how much work it is to keep an army battle ready. You need to replenish losses, replace lost arms and wounded or killed unit commanders. Your army constantly grows, as the Union you might field up to and more than 200,000 soldiers in the last battles. While these masses of soldiers are of course not really possible to display on the battle maps, even in 2D, Ultimate General Civil War does a great job at giving you the feeling of commanding a huge force of 10,000s of men, that still are not really faceless masses, thanks to their commanding officers that give them a face, and of course the option to name the brigades. This kind of immersion is very rare and it might be a bit subjective, but nonetheless the sheer scale is sometimes breathtaking and realistically overwhelming. The last, easily to underestimate but actually very important point, the AI. Ultimate General Civil War possibly features the best tactics game AI I have ever seen. Nothing delivers immersion as well as the feeling that the enemy is actually countering your strategy, fighting back, trying to beat you. As this is supported by scripted events at some points, like the sudden arrival of reinforcements or flanking forces, just as it happened in history, the battles play out very realistic. This might seem of course somewhat predictable, but the great AI always changes at least a few things in their plan, and so every historical battle, while recognizable as such, plays out a bit different. Time to summarize the whole thing. The AI does not retreat when beaten, units can't flee the battlefield until they are wiped out, which results in staggering historical losses. The muskets and rifles are not really working as they should. This is especially true for repeaters and breech-loading rifles that are rather weak. The skirmishes and the cavalry are not really able to perform their duties they performed during the war, because recon is not really necessary. The minor battlefields are not really geographically accurate, but only cutouts of the grander major battles. And trench warfare is just missing, largely, and therefore fortifications are rather weak. But the historical elite units, and especially real Civil War generals you get your hands on in the campaign, are on point. There's a huge variety of muskets, rifles, carbines, revolvers, artillery pieces in the game, and they all work more or less historical correct, save for breech loaders and repeaters. In their battlefield roles, skirmishes and cavalry work more or less well. Close combat cavalry is almost useless though, which is accurate. The major battlefields are depicted very correct, based on satellite data and historical accounts. The focus points of the battles are the victory points of the missions, and while some details are not entirely fitting, overall it's great. Overall mechanics work very well for immersion and really transport the scale of this war. Just saying, but the highest losses the US ever received in a war were in this war, not in the Second World War. And the excellent AI with good scripted events creates a suburb historical battle feeling and really gets you going during these battles. You're stressed out like a commander should be, and certainly was at that time. Just to make something clear, I really, really like this game, and it was a close call. As you might have noticed, a lot of the negative points are matched or overruled by positive ones. This made the decision really difficult. I even asked a few people on Military History Visualized Discord because I was considering a middle ground rating. Thanks to Mensch 1066 for convincing me otherwise. Alright, let's get to the point. Ultimate General Civil War is a great game. And while it is not entirely realistic or authentic, mainly because of some game mechanics not working as intended, overall it is far more historically accurate than most games I have played, and certainly more than those I have featured so far on this channel. So, for outstanding American Civil War immersion, especially thanks to excellent AI and beautiful battlefields, I am very happy to grant Ultimate General Civil War the verified rating. A huge thank you goes out to everyone from the official GameLabs forum that helped to determine the historical accuracy of the game. You guys rock. Oh, just a thing I thought you might like. Here is a small hint on the next game I will cover in this series. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like, a comment, or even subscribing. If you want to take a look at the game itself, just click right here. For a playlist of my other vids, do the same right here. And yeah, all the best. See you on the next video.